Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Toya's Quiet Storm Collections, a space where faith, purpose, and lived experience meet real conversation. I'm your host, Latoya Murchison, and today's episode invites us into a powerful, honest, and necessary dialogue. Today, my guest is someone who is doing transformative work at the intersection of mental health, sexual wellness, and HIV education. With a strong background in HIV care and community mental health, Kelly creates a space for people to explore their identities, their healing, and their humanity without judgment and without limits. Please help me and welcome Kelly to our show. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Latoya, for that introduction.
You are very welcome. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
I'm happy to be here.
So, my first question is, can you share what led you into this work as a mental health counselor and sex therapist?
I can. It's kind of a far back story. So, I've been living with HIV for 26 years. So, I'll start there. I would say that I've always had like a helping kind of personality. Like I think there's an innate thing about me that's always cared about other people, enjoyed helping other people. So that I think is part of my natural personality. But the HIV piece is a big part of it. So like I said, I got HIV 26 years ago. And shortly after that, I already knew that I wanted to do something meaningful with that diagnosis. So that was pretty apparent to me right away. And so like I was started out maybe doing a little bit of public speaking here and there right at the beginning. But shortly after that, even I would say 2005, I started working as a peer counselor. And so I was a peer counselor for other women living with HIV for about 8 years off and on. And in that, I also we started a program there for speaking engagements, like doing outreach and stuff. And so we started speaking in different communities around the city. I was training and teaching other people with HIV how to share their story so they could also go out in the community and share their story. And so that's also like the educator piece of me. But like, so it was, I was already doing counseling work. I was doing support groups for women living with HIV. It was already something I was doing. And I've had my own mental health struggles. People in my personal life have had their own mental health struggles. I see how mental health impacts so many parts of our lives, including HIV. And so after, like, we lost funding at that nonprofit I was working at. And so that was actually and I lost my job then. And so that's actually what got me to go back to school. Mm-hmm. And so I went back to school after that and finished my bachelor's, but I didn't finish my bachelor's yet. So I finished my bachelor's and then went straight into getting my master's. And had support from the HIV nonprofit I was working at to help me get into that. Like they wrote letters of recommendation for me. So HIV support and HIV folks have been with me along the whole way since my diagnosis. So I would say like I got into this because it's partly just the kind of person I am, and also like my HIV diagnosis played a huge role. And so even after becoming a mental health therapist, I chose to get involved in sex therapy, and I have that certification now. But that's also influenced by doing my work in HIV. So, and I was an HIV educator in Seattle Public Schools for 15 years. And so like mental health and sex and HIV, like they all kind of go together in my world. And so it's almost been like a natural trajectory to be here where I'm at now.
Wow. You have really turn your storm into your passion that helps other people. I commend you for being able to be open and to take on that role of being a support for other people.
Thanks, Latoya.
How did your experiences shape the way you approach therapy and education?
Well, I would say it shaped it a lot, honestly. Because a side note, I will add, I'm HIV positive, but I'm also the mother and caregiver of a young adult who's a young adult now, child
Mm-hmm.
who is significantly impacted by their developmental disabilities.
Right.
So between that and HIV, like they both have really shaped
Mm-hmm.
the path that I'm on and like why I work so much in disability and I include HIV in that too. So they're really connected for me. Um, so what shaped, and I guess I started with that because how I've experienced living in systems and having to navigate systems as someone who has lived in poverty, who has HIV, and who has a disabled kid has really impacted how I view systems.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and working in systems, I worked in nonprofit for 16 years. Now I'm in private practice. But all those systems were so challenging to navigate, and they really impacted my mental health. And they're set up so difficult. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have to be operating up here a lot of times to even be able to navigate the systems. It's like it's setting people up to fail. It seems like they're just so challenging, right? And so part of like how I got into private practice was that I felt like those systems that I was in a lot of the time weren't really helping me do the best work that I was wanting to do for people. And so I would say my experience with systems has played a huge role. Also, like I know what it's like to be someone living with HIV. I
Mm-hmm.
know what it's like to struggle with mental health. I know what it's like to navigate challenging systems. I know what it's like to be a single parent and have a disabled kid and all these things. My
Mm-hmm.
circumstances have changed a lot, but they were very hard for a while. Right. So, like, there's something about like having an education that I have that I went and got, but like there's also the lived experience that highly influences how I show up. So I don't share everything about my life with my clients, obviously, but I'm open about HIV if it feels fitting, and I'm open about having a disabled kid because it takes a huge part of my life. It's a huge part of my life. So there are things I share about. So my lived experience like shapes so much of what I do.
What does compassionate relationship with self really look like in practice?
I think compassionate relationship with self, what that looks like, it's not always easy.
Mm.
And I see it in my work all the time too. It's something that people struggle with a lot. People are really hard on themselves, right? I think compassion for self can come from like, for example, when I think about like some of the things I've done in the past that maybe weren't coming from my best self, I can have compassion for myself and that realizing what I knew then, what resources I had then. Like there are things that like if things were different, I may have acted differently. I may have done things differently. So I can have compassion for that part of me who was working with what they had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the more that we can do that, the better. And also the more that we can like move forward with things instead of like being stuck on what we've done in the past. It's like, okay, you can learn from those things, but in order to move forward, the only thing you can really do is to behave differently. But I think having a lot of compassion from where you've been and how like and why you were there, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important because like we weren't all given the same set of circumstances,
Right.
right? And like we're thinking about like HIV, a lot of times people can beat themselves up about that too. But like we're just humans doing what humans do.
Right.
So I think that compassion for ourselves and others is like incredibly important.
What are some common challenges people face when systems don't fully understand their experience?
Oh, Latoya, how much time do you got?
As much as you need.
But this is something that's really I'm really sensitive about is systems. You know, so wait, can you repeat the question? Because I think there's a part I missed, so I want to make sure I'm getting it all. Can you repeat the question, Latoya?
Um, what challenges do people face with people trying to understand that they face with people not fully understanding what they're going through?
Well, I think one thing I'll notice, and I've had my own experience with this, is that like you might see behavior coming from people, like anger.
Mm-hmm.
Anger is the one that sticks out to me the most right now.
Yes.
And so like, and by the time you meet someone, they might be up here and seem so unreasonable and so angry and so whatever, but like, you know what happened before they got there.
Right.
And so a lot of times anger is just because people have had so much injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so tired from navigating these systems, and it's not effortless to navigate these systems. And we don't make it easy. And so like, I think it's helpful for people to understand, like, if you meet someone who is angry, especially, right, or sad but angry, really, like be curious instead of being judgmental, because there's probably something underneath that. They probably haven't been seen, they haven't been heard, they're not getting their needs met, right? And they probably have tried other things and nothing was working, so now they're at anger. So I wish the systems were easier to navigate. I think also I'll say this from like a poverty and disability standpoint with systems, and it's something that I don't do because I also have a sliding scale. So like I see some people on sliding scale, and my sliding scale is pay what you can, and with that sliding scale, I don't ever have anyone prove their income to me. I just believe them. And the reason why I say that is because systems oftentimes you don't have a lot of privacy. Right. When you're poor, disabled, chronically ill, anything like that, like you're always having to prove that you're poor. You're always having to prove that you're disabled. You always have to prove and other people don't have to give up that kind of information. Right. And so like it's assumed that like if you're poor or disabled, like you don't have to have privacy as well. So there's a lot of stuff with systems that I have issues with. But I mean, there's some good things that could happen with them too. I mean, sure, but like they can be really challenging for people.
I completely understand. I've had some of those experiences myself. Speaking of your practice, could you tell us more about what you do?
Yeah, I love it so much. I love what I do. So happy to talk about it. So I've been in private practice for 4 years. Before that, I was in community mental health for 6 years. And then before that was HIV nonprofit. So I work with individuals one-on-one. I work with a lot of folks who struggle with like OCD, ADHD, autism. People with chronic health issues and disability are also my people. I also work with couples, and I do some groups. And I also am a certified sex therapist and sex educator. So sometimes someone might come to me for something related to OCD, but then sex therapy will still come in. Sometimes people come to me for something specific to sex therapy, and then we realize OCD or ADHD is really causing them some distress. Right. And let me back up. I'm also contracted with EIP here in Washington State, which is Early Intervention Program. And so I see HIV positive folks through EIP. So I work with a couple of folks who are HIV positive, but also struggling with mental health diagnoses and health and those things too. Right. I also offer supervision to people who are new out of grad school to become a therapist. And I'll work with anyone, but I prefer to provide supervision to folks who are historically marginalized. So people who either first generation college student, I was the first person in my family to go to college. So I have a lot of heart for people who are first generation. So people are first generation, people who are disabled, people of color, people who are queer, like anyone who's kind of marginalized, I really have more of a heart for helping them get going. And then I do trainings as well. I did a training back in April around navigating sexuality and chronic illness.
Oh, wow.
So like I might have couples come in where one partner has a chronic illness and maybe the other one doesn't, and I help them kind of navigate the relationship while also having the chronic illness be part of it. It can be hard for some folks that maybe someone starts to become more of a caregiver than their partner or whatever. There's a lot of things that can come up. But that's like what I do. I meet people in person here. I'm in my office now. I also do telehealth, so people online, I can meet them online as well.
Okay.
But I think that's about it.
How can people begin to honor their mental health needs without feeling like they have to fit into a box?
Well, first of all, I will say that stigma is part of this too, right? Just like HIV. So a big part of my work, I didn't mention this, but I'll say this now. A big part of my work and the best part of my job is like helping people become more liberated and empowered. And so like every day I have the honor of like watching people become more liberated and empowered. It's amazing, right? But that's because like we're breaking down stigma too. And so like with mental health, like there's just so much stigma. So first of all is like, if we could try to get past the stigma and realize like everyone struggles, quite honestly. Some are just better at hiding it than others. And the best we can do is like just be honest with ourselves, right? Like if we can get past the stigma and realize it's okay to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And that going to therapy doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Honestly, so many people I work with are like the best people I've ever met, and they're so kind and sensitive. And the reason why they're struggling is because they care so much about stuff. You know, so they're like lovely people. And so like we need to be able to realize it's okay to ask for help. And we also need to make sure we prioritize things like the basic things we hear our whole lives, like sleeping and eating well and moving our bodies. But isolating is so bad too, right? So that's like asking for help and making sure that we're in connection and community with others is also really important. And when I was doing the peer counseling work, like that still is with me. Like I'll be with clients now and I'll be like, have you met anybody else with cancer yet? Have you met anybody else with this? Have you met anybody, you know, because like peers are magical. So that's something else I will put out there for mental health too, is like being connected to people who understand what you're going through is really helpful as well. But also like there's no shame in it. Right. So like my whole thing is getting rid of shame as well, like as much as we can when it's because it can be really unnecessary. Because everyone struggles and we need help. Like you might go to the doctor if your arm was broken. So why not go to a therapist too? Like if your mood is struggling. Right. But so I guess that I encourage people to be proactive. Like don't be afraid to tell your doctor or someone that you trust that you're struggling. Take care of the basics, like I said, sleeping, eating, moving body. I think that's about it for now.
What does a strength-based approach look like for someone who feels overwhelmed or misunderstood?
Well, a strength-based approach looks like something I do naturally, which is why I include it in my approach to things, is because it's just how I naturally view people. I can like right away, I can pretty much see people's strengths. And so much of like going to the doctor or mental health too, like we're always thinking about deficits or where people are struggling. Like that part usually can stick out. Oh, okay, pretty well, more obviously, but like there's so much strength, right? Like people are already coming with so many tools and so much strength. And so I can see people's strengths right away. And so like instead of focusing on the deficits or whatever, like I focus on the strengths. I'm like, well, look at you've done this and look at you doing this and you just told me you did this. Right. And so it's like pointing out people's strengths, which ties into feeling empowered and ties into feeling liberated. Because like we're building on what they already have instead of focusing on the deficits, on what's missing. And by focusing on the strengths, I think it does help people just keep building on that, right? And also realizing like, oh, wait, I do already have a lot of skills. I do already know a lot, right? And look at, I've made it this far in life. I must know something, right? And so like strength-based is like, it's a huge part of what I do and what I just do naturally. But I think we can lose sight of our strengths when we're suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So I mostly am just highlighting what I see that maybe people lost sight of because they were struggling.
Reminded them that they were created with a purpose.
Absolutely. And helping people find meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Sexual health is still a topic in many spaces. Why is it important to normalize this conversation?
It's so important, Latoya. I've been spending years and years talking about it. Because again, like people are going to keep being people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And being a sexual human is most people. Not all, but most people, right? And so like to pretend that that's not true like does a disservice. And I think we do a disservice to people when we like don't talk about these things. Like I do sexual history assessments on people all the time, and so many people ask, "Well, when did you learn about sex? What did you first learn when you learned about sex? Who did you learn that from?" Right? And like a lot of people are like, "No, my parents didn't talk about that. No one talked about that." I was like, well, "Where did you learn it from?" Right? And so like there's so much shame and stuff attached to that too. Um, but people are going to do what people are going to do. And I think like there'd be reduced infection of HIV too if people could talk more openly and honestly around sexual health, right? Like STIs and HIV, all of that has so much stigma attached to it, but it's so unnecessary, Latoya. Like it's mostly it's ignorance, and that's where I could have compassion. I could have compassion for ignorance because that just someone just doesn't know, right? Doesn't give them a right to be a jerk, but they just don't know. Um, but like our sexual health is a huge part of who we are, and to pretend that we just ignore that and don't talk about it, like why would we do that, right? It's a disservice. And so I know sometimes in therapy too, like therapists aren't always bringing up people's sexual health or asking about that, but I always make sure to ask about that kind of stuff with people. And if it's not important, it's not important. I'll talk about it, but I always make sure to ask about it, right? Because I also want people to know like how to keep themselves safe, how to have challenging conversations with partners. Like all of this is part of it, right? And like how you feel about yourself, your own self-esteem and your self-worth. And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff around sexual health. We can even talk about boundaries. And if people have a lot of experience with boundaries, then like we need to talk about that too, because maybe someone would use protection if they felt like they had more boundaries. But like having these open, honest conversations with people where there's like no judgment, it's just being curious. You just want people to be as healthy as they can be and happy as they can be, whatever that looks like for them. And you just give people all the information that you can give them, and they can leave and make empowered, informed choices for themselves. But it's not my job to judge.
Right.
It's just my job to provide information, and then people can choose what to do with that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, very well said. As an HIV educator, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you encounter?
Well, when I used to go into the schools, I did that for a long time. Um, the kids always, because they knew an HIV positive speaker was coming in, because I was an HIV educator, but they knew I was HIV positive too, so I share some of my story as well in the education. They always assumed that like I was going to look sick.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came in, they're like, "You have HIV?" Like they assume HIV has a look,
Mm-hmm.
or like there's like this stereotype around it, right? And so I think that is one of them for sure. Is people have this idea about who gets HIV and who doesn't, and the fact is anybody could get HIV, right? And so like that's a huge one. Is like, and I think a lot of people want to know how someone got HIV because they want to see like if they fall under that somehow. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big reason why people want to know. People always want to know how someone got
And to piggyback off of that, I've had several people say, "You don't look like you're sick. You look too put together." What does a sick person look like? Not all sicknesses are visible on the outside. So I appreciate you bringing light to that so people understand, you don't can't just look at somebody and see if they're sick or not. So
You
thank
can't.
you. Yeah.
Yep.
It's
I think people get this image from like early days of HIV and AIDS still,
mhm,
right? And they think like they still have these images and ideas of what, but it's not. You can look just like we do,
right.
right? Yeah.
Yes. Mm,
So I would say that how someone looks, and also that people have to think that they're being really risky.
mm,
That only people who are living risky lives. And by the, I want to be clear, like regardless if someone is being risky or not, like no one is deserving
mm-mm.
of any of this, of HIV, of any of the things, right? Like,
No.
so I just want to be clear about that too. I don't want to be judging anyone how they got HIV or whatever. Like I have zero judgment around that. So I just want to be clear when I say that too. But people have a lot of ideas, like they assume that you were injecting drugs or you are being promiscuous,
Mhm,
especially like if it's a woman living with HIV. I think that they really go there, right? As far as like you must have been promiscuous or something.
mhm,
I think those are all still true. I think people still have those kinds of beliefs a lot of times. They assumed you did something wrong
mhm.
instead of just being a human,
Right.
right? So I think there's still a lot of assumptions around someone did something wrong.
I
Um,
totally
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said I totally agree with that.
Yep.
And
So
it's unfortunate.
it is unfortunate because that's not the case.
Mm-mm.
People are just being people, and people get HIV and encounter other things around their sexual health for a million different reasons.
Mhm.
And I always tell someone if you've ever engaged in unprotected sex, regardless if it was with a long term partner or anything else, like, then you have put yourself at risk too. Right. And I know some people who have like used condoms and had someone take a condom off while during, and so like there are things that like my whole point is that people are not being out there doing bad things, being bad people.
Right.
People living with HIV are just regular people like everyone else. And any other STI, I will say too, not just HIV, other STIs too, because there's so much stigma around herpes and other things too, right?
Mhm.
But people are just doing what people do.
Right. To follow up on that, how can we better support individuals navigating HIV diagnosis, prevention, and long-term wellness with dignity?
How can we better support people living with HIV?
Hmm. Through the diagnosis, prevention, and long-term wellness.
Well, I think continually meeting people where they're at
Mhm.
and not where you think they should be, first of all. We always have to meet people where they're at. Like anything else is just not going to work, right? So meeting people where they're at, meeting people with curiosity versus judgment. Um, of course, I'm going to say things too around connecting people to peers, making sure people are educated about what the illness they live with, because that is empowering too. Um, but like diagnosis can be really scary, right? Like that part can be really scary. So when someone first gets diagnosed, first of all, it's just like, okay, like let's just look what the facts are first before they're like, oh my, it's so scary,
Right.
right? And then there might be conversations around disclosure. Am I going to tell my family? Do I want to tell a friend? Who do I want to tell? Do I want to tell anybody? Do I have to tell people? Like, so all of that stuff, like, what does this mean for my future? Can I have children? Will I be able to get married? Am I going to die? Like, the diagnosis piece, there's a lot there. But, like, when people are getting more stabilized, then it can be like, okay, now how do I date? Or how do I, whatever, right? So, like, some of my stuff has been, like, around dating and disclosure with people with HIV, too. But there are different stages, right? And then maybe someone wants to have a baby, or maybe someone wants to, but I think it's just like, again, meeting people where they're at
Mhm.
and meeting them with curiosity over judgment. I think if you can do those two things, like you'll go pretty far.
You spoke of disclosure. How important is it to realize that when you disclose to someone, it has to be in your timing and not other people's timing?
1,000% it does, right? Like, it's your story, it's your health, it's your information, and there's no reason anyone needs to know.
Right.
Especially with all the stuff that we have out there these days. Like, there's no reason anyone needs to know. And so you get to decide, right? You get to decide who's worthy of knowing that information, even. Like, maybe, like, not everyone has to know that stuff, right? Like, maybe your doctor knows, and maybe you'll tell, like, your sexual partner or something, right? But even today with, like, PEP and PrEP and, like, people don't transmit HIV if they're undetectable through unprotected sex, right? So, like, there's less and less reasons why we have to be, like, disclosing. But regardless, like, people often want to disclose because they want to feel seen and supported, and they want their sexual partners to know. But it's so personal.
Right.
Like, we have to decide if and when we want people to know. But it's so personal. Like, I was someone who kind of talked about it right away, but that was my own process.
Right.
That's not true for everybody else. Some people don't want to talk about it. Some people only want a handful of people to know. I'm over here blabbering all the time and doing HIV education and stuff, but that's not for everybody.
Right.
Right. And so it's just, again, meeting people where they're at here too. It's very personal, and no one should feel rushed to do it.
Exactly. What does it look like to reclaim your narrative when you've been silenced or misunderstood?
So what is it like to reclaim? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
What does it look like?
What does it look like? Well, I feel like I have been doing that in my life. And I try to help other people that I work with do the same thing, kind of rewrite their narrative, right? Because for me, Latoya, no one can use my HIV diagnosis against me,
Right.
because I have zero shame about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, like, I've rewritten the narrative in that way. Because, like, you can't use anything against me if I own it and I'm like, yep, you're right. Like, I have HIV, I don't have any shame about it. Like, nothing you can say because it made me feel bad about it. Right. And so it's like, how do we, I guess what I'm going to say is, like, if we can create meaning and purpose, I think that helps rewrite the narrative, because I've created a whole life and career out of my problems, basically, right? Like, out of my struggles. Like, my whole career has been based off what I've struggled with in some way or another. And so, like, instead of my story being one of struggle and suffering, which it's in there, to be very clear, it's also one of building and opportunity and creativity and connection. And I've so much opportunity. Like, and also, like, there have met so many amazing people, Latoya, after becoming HIV positive that I would have never have met otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, where do I find the gifts? Where do I find the meaning? And if I can help other people do the same, regardless if it's HIV, maybe it's their mental health, maybe it's something else about their background, right? But we can change the narrative, and we can take our power back.
Very powerful statement. For someone listening who feels disconnected from their body or identity, where do they begin to heal?
Disconnected from their body or their identity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, disconnected from their identity, the first thing that sticks out to me is, like, getting clear about what people's values are. Because if we can get clear about what your values are or what our values are, we can get more clear about who we are too, how we identify, like, what's important to us, right? And that can shift for a lot of people. Life circumstances can shift what's important to us. And I may have identified one way before, and then all this life experience happened, and now I'm kind of like, I don't really know. I feel kind of in between. Like, before I was this person who wasn't sick, and now I am this person who's sick, or whatever, right? So, like, that's a change in identity, and what do you do with that? And so some people are going to struggle with that. Same with aging. I can see that with aging too, where it could shift identity. So sometimes there can be loss and grief in identity shifting as well. So making sure that I can honor and acknowledge that, like not ignore that that's true, but also where can we build strength in your new identity? What was it? Oh, in touch with their body. That was the other piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that one I see a lot in my work, especially related to trauma, because I work with a lot of folks with trauma too. And a lot of times people have trauma in particular, they can feel very disconnected from their bodies in all kinds of ways. It was safer just to like not be connected to your body. And so like some people don't even realize that they're having a lot of physical pain or this, like they're just like not even connected to their body. Right. And so like if people aren't connected to their bodies, they can actually be doing a lot of harm to their bodies as well. And some people feel mad at their bodies because they're like, this body causes me pain, this body this body that. Like, I'm tired of being in this body. Right. And like, fair enough. I get it. But also like the more we can like be more in tune with our body, because our body also gives us important information. Right? It's like gives us important news, important signals. It lets us know like if we're hurting, if we're hungry, if we might have a physical sensation that lets us know that we have something to be afraid of. Right? So like if we're really paying attention to our bodies, we'll be more wise too, because there's a lot of wisdom in our bodies. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, it's not a comfortable place to be in our bodies because we don't like how we feel. We don't like the feelings we're having, or we don't like the physical pain, right? So the more we can help people learn that they can tolerate hard feelings that are in their bodies, that they don't have to leave their body in order to have those feelings, the better. And so, but it takes a lot of work. It's hard work. It's not easy. Because if people aren't used to dealing with a lot of anger, like a lot of sadness that might come in, or a lot of just really set hard feelings, or like, oh, that's too much. I don't want to be in my body. It's too much. I'd rather like go have a drink. I would rather go whatever the thing is that gets me out of my body. So trying to help people feel safe being in their bodies.
I have one final question for you.
Okay.
What does living fully in your truth mean to you?
Well, I think it means kind of a lot of what I've been touching on today is that like, Latoya, I've lived not an easy life. Right. But I don't have shame about the path that I have gone down to get to where I'm at today. I can speak truthfully about who I am, where I've been, all of that. And since I do feel some sense of empowerment now, and I do feel more liberated now, I feel like I can be really honest about who I am, where I've been. And I don't have to carry the shame. I don't have to hold my head down. I'm not worried about what other people might say about me because the people who love me aren't going to be saying those things about me. Right. And so it's like, I mean, I feel like I've created this whole life where my whole thing is trying to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And helping other people feel like it's okay to tell the truth. Right. So now I live pretty out loud because there's not a lot of shame, and things can be so isolating. Experiences can be so isolating. Like living with HIV and being a parent of a disabled kiddo can be really isolating experiences. And so the more I talk about my truth, the more I educate to those things as well. Like it's not so isolating. Like people get to understand more as well. So by living in my truth, I'm also helping other people have better understanding of what people might be going through. So I just think living in my truth now is like, it's just what I do.
Right. Kelly, this conversation reminds us that healing is not one size fits all. It is layered, personal, and deeply connected to how we see ourselves and how we are seen by others in the world. Thank you for showing us there is space for us in our stories and our identities. This has been the Toya's Quiet Storm Connections. Join us next week for a new episode. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, Latoya.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.